So we're done with our logic and reasoning unit, and now we're ready to get into what you would classically call geometry, what you were expecting from this course. And so keep in mind that we will be using that logic and reasoning all throughout the rest of the course. So it was definitely a necessity, but now we're going to get into what, like I said, what you would more think of when you think of geometry. So some of these things you'll already know, but some of them will be brand new. So let's go ahead and jump in. We are working on parallel lines in this unit, and we're going to start just with some lines and angles, identifying some lines and angles. All right, parallel lines. These are coplanar lines that do not intersect. So when you first learned about parallel lines, you were probably taught they're just lines that don't intersect, but it is important to say that they are coplanar because they have to be on a flat surface to be parallel. And we'll talk about other lines that don't intersect in a moment. But let's look at our diagram and find some parallel lines. So you can see that right here we have line AD and line CB or BC, and those two are parallel. We know they're parallel. It's hard to tell on your paper, but these arrows tell us that they are parallel. When you have arrows in the middle of a line, just like with congruent marks on segments, these two tell us that the two lines are parallel. So you can compare that to AE and BF. Those are also parallel, and they only have one arrow on each of those. So we know the ones with one arrow are parallel. We know the ones with two arrows are parallel. Now there's more than just those parallel lines on here, but those are the only ones we're going to point out right this moment. Also, I didn't mention it. This is the symbol for parallel. It's two parallel lines. Imagine that. And I spelled parallel wrong right there. So that's the symbol for parallel. Remember, we have to have at least two lines to be parallel, because if we only have one line, there's nothing for it to be parallel to. We can also have parallel segments, and parallel segments would be segments that are parts of parallel lines. Parallel rays, same idea. All right, our next thing are skew lines. Skew lines are non-coplanar lines that do not intersect. So this is where the difference comes into play. Skew lines only occur in three-dimensional space. But if we look at the blue lines on this figure, AB and CG, AB is skew to CG. There's no symbol for skew, we just have to write it out. Because this is a three-dimensional figure, it's kind of like, it's a cube is what it is. And so let me grab a cube. So what we're looking at is AB is this edge right here, and then CG is an edge back here. So these two will never intersect, but they aren't parallel because they're going in different directions. So in three-dimensional space, you get this all the time, that you have these skew lines. And in the classroom, we could look at a corner of the class, a vertical line at the corner, and then corner where a floor meets a wall and a different area of the classroom. Those would be skew. You see these all the time. You just might not have ever been told what they are called. So skew lines only exist in 3D space. They never intersect, but they're on different planes. Then parallel planes are planes that don't intersect. So if you look at our figure here, the top and the bottom, the red side and the orange side, those are parallel planes because they never intersect. Keep in mind, planes go on forever. All right, another vocabulary word that you need to know is a transversal. We will use that a lot. And it's a line that intersects two or more lines. Two or more coplanar lines. Got to be specific about that. So if you have two lines, whether they're parallel or not, and another line that runs through them, as you can see in this diagram here, we've got lines L and M. Those are two lines on a plane. So T is the transversal. And sometimes to abbreviate, I'll just call it T-versal. When we get into some theorems over the next couple days, we'll abbreviate just to make them shorter. Now, when we have two lines that are cut by a transversal, we use the word cut when a transversal intersects those two lines. We have a series of angles that are created. We have a whole bunch of pairs of angles. So we have corresponding angles, or it's the first set. Corresponding angles are angles that are in the same place. Correspond means to be the same as. A correspondent is representing usually a news organization in another place, so they're the same, but they're in different locations. So when we look at corresponding angles, if we look at angles 1 and 5, both of those are the upper left angle in their intersection. So angle 1 and angle 5 are corresponding angles. Then 2 and 7 are 2 and 6 are corresponding angles. We've got 3 and 7, and then finally we've got 4 and 8 are corresponding angles. So when you have two lines cut by a transversal, you end up with 4 sets of corresponding angles. Now the numbers won't always be the same as these, so you need to make sure you understand how to find the angles, which ones go together, not try to memorize the pairs using the numbers. Our next set of angles are alternate interior angles. Now let's look at our picture up here. Interior is between the two lines. Okay, so when we have an interior angle, we know it has to be between the two lines. Exterior are not between the two lines. So alternate interior angles, they're between the two lines. Alternate means different sides. So one's on one side of the transversal, one's on the other. So angle 4 and angle 6 are alternate interior angles. They're both between the lines. One's on the left side of the transversal, one's on the right side. We also have angles 3 and 5 as alternate interior angles. Moving on to our third set of angles, same side interior angles. These are sometimes called consecutive interior angles. Interior means they're between the two lines. Same side, not samer side, just same side. They're the same side of the T-versal. So 4 and 5 are same side interior angles, or they are consecutive interior angles. So angles 4 and 5, and then angles 3 and 6 are also same side interior angles. And we have one more set of angles, one more type of angles to look at, and they are alternate exterior angles. Alternate, again, means different sides. Exterior is not between the lines. So let's look at our figure. If we look at angle 1, because it's outside of our two lines, going to the other side, angle 7 is on the other side of the transversal. So angle 1 and angle 7 are alternate exterior, and then 2 and 8 are also alternate exterior angles. And we'll be working with these types of angles for the next 2 sections after this one. So it is very important that you are able to identify these. So let's look at some practice with all of this. Okay, now I'm going to list out some answers. There are more than what I will list out. So you might have something that's not on here. On the answer key online, I'll try to go ahead and write them all out. But just be aware that you could have something different and still be correct. So, to find parallel segments. Now, we talked about the fact that parallel segments are parts of parallel lines. So, 2 that just jump out are these 2 front ones right there. So we could say that segment DH is parallel to segment GC, and I can draw an arrow on there to say that those are the same. We also have, okay, all of those are parallel to each other. We could also have all of these blue segments are parallel to each other. And all of these green segments are parallel to each other. So we have lots of different ways that we could do parallel segments there. Skew segments, remember those are ones that are going not intersecting but not in the same plane. So we could do DC and BF. I'm just picking 2 at random. But again, there's a whole lot of different options because you could do DC and BF or FG or EH or AE. All of those would be skewed to CD. So there are lots of options here. And then parallel planes, that's just if you're looking at a cube, just sides that are opposite each other. So on this cube, the yellow and the white sides are parallel. The blue and the green. Green doesn't look green because I'm using green screen, but this is the green side. If I move it over here, it kind of disappears. And then the orange and red, like we said before, those are parallel planes. So I'm just going to do the top and the bottom. So plane ABC is parallel to plane EFG. Remember, when you're naming planes, you need 3 of the points on that plane, and they can't be in a straight line. So any 3 corners on that plane would work. All right, moving down, we're just naming all our alternate interior angles. So remember, that's different sides and between the 2 lines. R is the transversal. You don't have to write that out. I'm just doing it to kind of help. M and N are our 2 lines. So if we look at lines between, well, 2 and 6, or excuse me, angles between, 2 and 6 are alternate interior. And then 7 and 3 are alternate interior. They are different sides of the transversal, but between our 2 lines. Same side interior, here I spelled it correctly. Those are between the lines, but on the same side of the transversal. So angles 2 and 3, and then angles 6 and 7. Let me color code that a little bit. Angle 6 and 7, there we go. So same side interior angles there. Our third set of angles, alternate exterior, different sides of the transversal, but outside our 2 lines. So that's angle 1 and angle 5, and then angle 8 and angle 4. It doesn't matter which one you list first when you're doing this. I usually try to do the smaller number first, but it's just because I want to. No specific reason for that. And then finally, we've got corresponding angles. Remember, those are angles in the same place. So 1 and 3, 2 and 4, 8 and 6, and then 7 and 5. I'll go back and write those out. So that's it for our lines and angles section. Remember, finding these angles is very important because you're going to need it for the next, not only the next two sections, but this is going to come back into play again and again. So you need to be able to recognize these angles, identify them, and then the next two sections will talk about what happens when our lines are parallel. We have special situations for these angles. So that's it. Do the practice, check over your work, make sure you understand it, ask questions if you have them, get ready for that mastery check. Good luck.